For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Urbanik. I'm the worship pastor here, and it is my privilege and pleasure to be able to bring the message to you this morning. And those of you who know me know I'm fired up about the Word of God and be able to bring that to you this morning. So, during my first few months here on North Trentham Road, I don't know if you know this about me, but I had kind of a bumpy experience. Not necessarily relationally, not spiritually, or even metaphorically. I mean, literally, I had a bumpy experience going up and down North Trentham Road. For those of you who don't know, there's kind of a couple of potholes. And so in my first few months here, like a newbie, I would just pick a lane and then thumpity thump thump down the road. And it wasn't until it was a couple of months in that I started to get that Columbia instinct. Right? So you start to move left and right. And when I would drive with people who've lived here for a long time, they had this sixth sense. It was amazing. They would drive and then almost just by instinct, they'd be in this lane. And then there's not a car on the road, but they're moving into this lane and then this lane. And it's like they just magically knew where those potholes were, and this instinct just took over, and they knew where to find those smooth stretches of road. And it's funny because everyone's a little bit different. Because when I drive with Pastor Casey, there's some potholes that he takes head on, and there's some that he avoids. And then when I drive with Pastor Kenny, there's different ones that he avoids, and it's like a personal art form. How do you get down and up North Trentham Road? But I could have saved myself a lot of wear and tear on my vehicle if I would have had someone just riding with me during those first few months to show me where, like, hey, stay away from that one. Whoa, 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 ba-boom, okay? I could have saved myself a lot of trouble. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we need guides to show us where the potholes are in life. We need guides, okay? No matter how big or small the potholes. I mean, some potholes, right, they're small, they're medium, they're a little jarring, but in the end, there's no harm done. But then there's the potholes like the one in Target parking lot. And I can't even see the bottom of that one. And it's like, if I hit that, there is no salvation. I will need a new car. I will need towed. There is no getting out of that one. And I need a guide to show me, hey, watch out for that one. Like me and Becca will, text each other, like, watch out for that one, okay? Because that could be bad. And I think we all need that as we go throughout our lives. We need a guide to show us where the pitfalls and the dangers are, okay? Because no matter who you are in this room, no matter how old, no matter how young, no matter how new to the faith or mature in the faith you are, this is true of you. You have never been where you are before. We are all walking forward into new territory. Okay? In 500 BC, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus used to say that no person steps into the same river twice. In other words, you have changed, and the river has changed since last you stepped into it. Okay? So we are all going into new territory, and we need a guide. Okay? Now, I said that you've never been where you are before. I never said that no one has been where you are before, because that's something totally different. Because this life that we are on is a well-worn trail that has literally been walked on by millions, billions of people. Okay? So it's one thing to say you've never been here. It's another thing to say no one has been here. Just like the Oregon Trail of old, we are on a well-worn trail, but that trail has dangers, has pitfalls, has potholes, and outright traps that we need to be aware of. And all of us in this room would greatly benefit from a guide to show us how to stay on safe paths. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to hear from one of the greatest tour guides in history. We're going to hear from King Solomon, a man who's unparalleled in wisdom and knowledge, and he's going to talk about that very thing, how to stay on safe paths. This morning, if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6. And in Proverbs 6, we are going to see 4 very different, very distinct and particular potholes that Solomon urges his son to avoid. These potholes are going to touch on our own gullibility, our work ethic, our need for control, and our seemingly incurable desire for the forbidden. So before we get into the text, I want to take just a little bit of time and preface how we're going to tackle this chapter. Okay? So Solomon's main goal for his son is to help him lead a full, safe, productive life, right? But the way he's going to do that is he's going to issue a few negative commands. Negative commands. In other words, thou shalt not. Okay? Now, I know the first thing that happens whenever I say thou shalt not, there's something that sort of seizes up inside us, right? It's the don't tell me what to do feeling. And that's very normal, okay? But you feel like this thou shalt not and your freedom all of a sudden becomes restricted, right? Okay? Well, I want to kind of get rid of that first initial reaction because Solomon is giving these thou shalt nots not to restrict his freedom and choices, but actually to give him freedom and give him choices. Because what he's going to say is that if you hit this pothole, it's actually going to enslave you. It's actually going to limit your choices. So I want you to avoid this. So he's not saying this to limit, he's saying this to give him freedom. Think of a thou shalt not, okay? I actually like thou shalt nots because they're a lot more free than thou shalts, okay? A thou shalt not, I've got an almost infinite number of choices in front of me. You say thou shalt not, and I've got one choice that's now taken out of play. Millions left over. I think I'm okay with that, right? Think of the Garden of Eden. Of all of the trees in the garden, you may what? Eat. You may freely eat. Enjoy it to the hilt. But one tree, don't eat. One choice taken out of play. Okay? Now, contrast that with the thou shalt. Contrast that with child, thou shalt clean thy room. Now, all of a sudden, all of our millions of choices are now taken away. And there's one choice to make. Go clean thy room. Right? So, of all those things, the thou shalt not, I want us to be able to treat that lightly because Solomon is not trying to limit his freedom. He's trying to give him freedom. And that makes a world of difference. So let's look at our text this morning and let's see what pothole Solomon warns us against first. And what we're going to see right out of the gate is Solomon is going to warn us about making foolish commitments. The first pothole to avoid is the pothole of gullibility. Gullibility. Look with me in the text. Start with me in Proverbs 6, verse 1. It says, my child, if you have made a pledge for your neighbor and you've become the guarantor for a stranger, if you've been ensnared by the words you have uttered and you've been caught by the words you have spoken, then, my child, do this in order to deliver yourself, because you have fallen into your neighbor's power. Go, humble yourself and appeal firmly to your neighbor. Permit no sleep to your eyes or slumber to your eyelids. You deliver yourself like a gazelle from a snare, like a bird from the trap of a fowler. Solomon is warning his son about the trap of making bad commitments, being financially gullible. Verse 1 paints the picture of a neighbor, right? And he's not talking about don't get into financial commitments with your buddy down the street. It's not talking about that neighbor. It's parallel with the word stranger, which is someone who is outside of Israel, someone who's outside of the family. This is saying don't get financially invested in someone of unproven character, unproven worth. Like you don't know. This is a high-risk financial situation. Don't get involved with that. Be careful. Be careful. In today's language, it would be like, son, please don't click the clickbait on the website. You may not have the latest and greatest for free. And it would be like, do not believe the email that comes in from Prince so-and-so from this foreign country that just needs your banking information so he can wire you a couple of $1 million in exchange for safe passage to the country. And he'll leave you a couple of million as a thank you. Don't believe it. Don't believe it when Amazon or the IRS calls or the bank calls and says, we need to clarify an issue with your account. Could you give us your password, please? Right? Don't be gullible, son. Don't be gullible. In the way of like funny scams that have come out, I ran across one that was aimed at Christians. It said, are you concerned for the safety of your pet after the rapture? Well, for only $9.99 a month, we have a crew who is trained to take care of your pets after Christ's coming. We have handpicked our people to make sure they are either staunch atheists or non-Christians to make sure they are not raptured as well. Your pets are going to be safe in our hands. Now, obviously, that's said with a bit of tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit of a hoax, but you can tell there's some people who might actually fall for that. And Solomon, being the wisest man who's ever lived, I'm sure he's seen a lot of stupid. And that's what he's saying. He's, son, don't be stupid. Don't fall for that. Please, don't be gullible. Don't run your mouth and make bad promises and wind up getting caught in bad financial situations. Be wise with your commitments. Don't be gullible. So we see the first pothole to avoid is gullibility. And if that pothole seemed like it was on one side of the road, this one's on the total opposite. Because the second pothole to avoid is laziness. Look with me in verses 6 through 11. 6 through 11 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Observe its ways and be wise. It has no commander, overseer, or ruler, but yet it prepares its food in the summer, and it gathers at the harvest what it will eat. How long, you sluggard, will you lie there? When are you going to rise from your sleep? Oh, it's just a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to relax. And your poverty will come like a robber, and your need like an armed man." A couple of things I want us to see in this passage. First thing is, he is not saying that you need to be working all the time. I know a lot of us want to take that and internalize that, and okay, don't be lazy, don't be a sluggard, work all the time. That's not what he's saying. This was given hundreds of years after the giving of the Mosaic law. And commandment number 4, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. An ancient Israelite knew how to rest, and they knew how to work. Okay? In fact, it was an exercise of faith for them to rest. It took more faith to stop working than it did to just muscle through and survive on your own. Sabbath was an act of faith in God's provision. So it doesn't mean never rest and always work. It means know the seasons. It means know when it's time to rest and know when it's time to work. And don't get those crossed up, because you'll miss out on the harvest. Now, it's also talking about ignoring consequences. Do you notice how the sluggard describes himself? It's just a little sleep, just a little slumber, just a little folding of the hands. They don't see themselves as being lazy. It's just habit for them. And there's no real consequences. Like, I really wouldn't go broke for just a little nap, would I? I really wouldn't starve to death because I don't have a harvest because of just a little loan, right? Like, that won't ever really come due. There's no real consequences. I always have something to bail me out, right? That's what Solomon's saying. He's like, no. There's no escaping the natural law and natural consequences. For the person that's lazy, your need and poverty will come like an armed robber, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's no miraculous rescue at the end. The natural consequences happen. You know, when I was a high school teacher, teaching choir, there was always that season of the year, contest season, the dreaded contest season, right? UIL competition. And during that time, choirs would have to have several pieces at a really high level of shine and polish in order to get top ratings. But getting high schoolers motivated to work really hard 8 and 10 weeks before an event, it's a little bit of a challenge. So I remember some of these little hoorah, we can do it speeches I would frequently give is like, you know what? When the day of contest comes, you're going to want it. You are going to want it, and you're going to want to get the top ratings. You're going to want to leave everything out on the field. You're going to want that feeling. You're going to want the reward for your hard work. But guess what? It doesn't matter. Because there is no magic rabbit to pull out of a magic hat and pull out like 30 seconds of chest thumping, and the feels are not going to make up for 6 to 8 weeks of hard work before that, right? You're not Harry Potter. You're not just going to amazingly come up with something, you know, out of the blue. That's what Solomon's saying, natural consequences. He goes, laziness has its natural consequence. Do not. The reward and the work, they go hand in hand. So, pothole number 1, don't be gullible. Pothole number 2, don't be lazy. Now, here we kind of hit a halfway mark in the proverb. Up until this point, Solomon's commands to not be gullible and lazy, they're pretty easy to see, right? You can see if someone's being gullible. You can see if something's being lazy. They're pretty easy potholes to avoid because it's action-based. These next 2 that he's going to warn us about are underneath the surface. They're harder to see. They're harder to identify, and they're harder to avoid because they deal with our internal motivations. They deal with our desires for the forbidden. Third pothole to avoid is this, our desire to control. Avoid the desire to control. This warning is about our ambition, our power and how we use it. It's about how we wield the Adamic command, the command given in the garden to go and rule. It is about how we are image bearers of God to reflect his glory in the world around us. Are we going to steward God's kingdoms and God's values, or are we going to set up our own little kingdoms and push down those around us and make sure that we're on top? That's what this warning is about. Look with me at verses 12 through 15. 12 through 15 says, "A worthless and wicked person walks around saying perverse things. He winks with his eyes, signals with his feet, points with his fingers. He plots evil with perverse thoughts in his heart, and he spreads contention at all times. Therefore, his disaster will come suddenly. In an instant, he will be broken, and there will be no remedy." Now, at first glance, it may appear that this guy has a really serious case of restless leg syndrome, right? Or he's popping his fingers all the time. He's just antsy. It's not really what this verse is pointing at. This is about a person who is a master of deception and mischief. You're pointing over here, using your hands to say this, meanwhile your feet are doing something else. You're pointing this way while doing something. It is someone whose words and actions are out of alignment. It is someone who is dealing with half-truths, no truths, outright lies, maybe a truth thrown in there somewhere. It's someone whose internal motivations and external workings, they're not the same. Okay? This is lies and deception at full throttle. And so that brings me to a really interesting question. Why do we lie? I want to take just a minute and don't think of like those people who lie. I want to turn the mirror inside. Why do we lie? Okay? Now, current research shows that the average person lies about 200 to 300 times per day. Per day. That's a lot of lies. Okay? Now, this is not like you cheated on your taxes and you're going to jail kind of lies, right? This could be anything from where your words, your thoughts, and your actions don't always line up. It could be someone saying, "How are you doing?" and you say, "I'm fine," and you're going through a divorce right now and things are not fine. It could be smiling in fake kindness when you're really irritated at something that someone just said. It could be just those times where you let the truth slip just a little. But I say again, that kind of brings you to, and I remember when I first read this, I was like, I am a Christian, thank you very much. I do not lie 200 times a day. I might lie 2 to 5 times, and 5 is a bad day. I'll make up for that tomorrow, right? Nope. It turns out I'm just as much a liar as everyone else. If you've ever tried to like flag yourself of whenever like you let the truth slip just a little, it's really depressing. But it brings me back to the question, why do we lie? Why would I tell someone I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning working on a project when I know good and well I went to bed at 11:30? Why would I be at lunch with someone and get the salad when I know good and well if I went with this person to that place, I would have gotten the big burger? Okay? Why would I do that? And here's where I want you to get. We lie. Lying is about control. We lie to control other people's perceptions. Why did I tell them I stayed up till 2:30? Because I want them to see me as hardworking. Why did I get the salad instead of the burger? Because I want them to see me as healthy and responsible. Lying is about controlling how we are seen. Lying is about controlling how others see us, and it's about how others see the world around them. Whether we know it or not, we are always trying to control the narrative as we craft our little kingdoms and make sure others are reinforcing our version of reality. And another thing when we lie is we are essentially taking away other people's freedom. Okay? We are taking away other people's freedom. It's a subtle form of enslavement because what you're doing is you're taking away their ability to choose based on what's actually there. By presenting them with a false reality, you are robbing them of their ability to choose wisely. And that enslavement works both ways, because when you are enslaved to lying, you are enslaved to how other people see you. And when people are not seeing you the way that you want, you have to go and manipulate it. You have to go and lie to make sure that everyone sees you the way you want to be seen. Okay? It's a form of enslavement. Take adultery, for instance. Let's take a big one. Okay? And Solomon's going to get to that in a second. Adultery. If a spouse cheats on another spouse and keeps that relationship hidden, why would they do that? Well, now, this spouse can't choose to leave because they don't know the truth of the situation. It allows that cheating spouse to maintain the illusion that this is a faithful and loving spouse while having an illicit relationship on the side. Lying robs people of their ability to choose. Does that make sense? Lying restricts our freedom. And you remember that tag of freedom. Solomon is trying to give freedom, not take it away. Live truthfully, because lying will enslave yourself and enslaves those around you. That's why Solomon shows us this trickster, the charlatan with the restless legs and popping fingers. And once again, he reiterates the natural consequences. When you're enslaved to lies, there's no miraculous bailout at the end. Your destruction will come quick, and there'll be nothing to stop it. What is Solomon's message to his son here? It's live truthfully, son. Live truthfully. Avoid the potholes of lies and control. Okay? Now, we're not going to go through the next few verses in depth, but in the next few verses, we're going to see what the desire to control looks like in its mature state. Okay? It's basically a list of God's pet peeves. 6, nay, 7 things that the Lord hates. And they all revolve around how we handle the truth and lies and control and power. God absolutely hates when we use our power to lie and deceive, control, and oppress those around us. I want you to imagine for a second what that must be like for God. God, who creates humanity in his own image, in his own likeness, literally little gods walking around, who's supposed to be shining his perfection, his glory, his attributes. We are made like him. And then imagine those same creatures taking God's love and justice and holiness and mercy and twisting it, contorting it, and making their own little kingdoms where instead of blessing, they are inflicting pain on those around them. They are oppressing and making sure that they are dominant, that they are on top. That doesn't sound like they are reflecting God. It sounds like they're reflecting someone else. Little flag should be going up right about now. John chapter 8, when Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees. Pharisees are like, we are children of Abraham. We are children of God. And Jesus is saying, yeah, you're right in that you are children of your Father. You are reflecting him, and you're doing what he wants. I'll give you that. But I guess you got one teensy-weensy little problem. You're trying to murder me. And that doesn't sound much like my Father. See, I'm reflecting my Father. I'm accomplishing his will. I'm glorifying him. And you're reflecting your father, who happenstance would have it, he was a murderer also. Because here it is. Your father is the devil. Ouch. It's a Jesus' mic drop moment. Brothers and sisters, you may not have been created a king or queen of Israel, but you were created to reflect God, no matter how big or small your sphere of influence may be. Now, if you thought Solomon got a little bit rough there, he goes one level deeper in his final point to his son. In fact, he pulls out all the stops and he gives a special fanfare before launching into this final section. The language kind of shifts a little bit suddenly. Read with me verses 20 to 23 and we'll quickly go through this. 20 says, "My child, guard the commands of your father. Do not forsake the instruction of your mother. Bind them on your heart continually. Fasten them around your neck. When you walk about, they will guide you. When you lie down, they will watch over you. When you wake up, they will talk to you. For the commandments are like a lamp. Instruction is like a light. And rebukes of discipline are like the road leading to life." Here, the text begins to take a tone that echoes some of the most famous passages in all of Hebrew Scripture. Mainly Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 6 is known as the Shema to the Jewish culture. It's one of the most important passages. It is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God and the Lord is one." Jesus went to this verse. What's the greatest commandment? You will love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and strength. You will teach these to your children when they lie down, when they rise up. You will bind it on your forehead, on your forearm. They will be with you always. So he's invoking a lot of this Shema language. And then you heard that last verse. He's also invoking language of the Psalms, right? The road is like a road leading to life and like a lamp. And it's starting to sound like David's poetry, right? So he's invoking Psalms. He's invoking the Shema. What's up with all this dramatic language? This is what Solomon's doing. He's saying, eyes on me, ears on me. If you hear nothing else in your entire life, son, listen to this. The most important thing you could possibly learn is stay away from the evil woman. That's it. And everyone's sort of like, what? Like, really? That's where you've been going? Stay away from the evil woman? What is he saying here? Now, in the last chapter, Pastor Casey preached last week, he's talking about the very literal consequences of adultery. Be satisfied with the wife of your youth. Enjoy this covenantal marriage. Now, in Proverbs 7, that we'll cover next week, we're in a totally different land. Okay? Now we have Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. The adulterous woman is not a literal adulterous woman. It is a way of life. It is the way of folly. It is the way of stupid. And that's what Solomon is warning his son against. Don't be stupid, right? He just has a million ways of saying it. So this chapter acts as a hinge, a fulcrum between where we're talking about literal adultery and now we're talking about something else entirely. So is Solomon telling his son to stay away from strange women? I believe absolutely yes. But he's also talking about something deeper, the fourth pothole. The fourth pothole to avoid is your desire to indulge in the forbidden. Your desire to indulge in the forbidden. That is his final warning. Let's look back at the rest of our text for this morning. We're going to cover verses 24 to 35. It's a little bit of a longer text, but we'll come back and we'll break it down after so we can kind of see what Solomon is driving home. Start with me in verse 24. 24. By keeping you from the evil woman, from the smooth tongue of the loose woman, do not lust in your heart for her beauty, and do not let her captivate you with her alluring eyes. For on account of a prostitute, one is brought down to a loaf of bread, but the wife of another man preys on your precious life. Can a man hold fire against his chest without it burning his clothes? Can a man walk on hot coals without scorching his feet? So it is with the one who sleeps with his neighbor's wife. No one who touches her will escape punishment. People do not despise a thief when he steals to fulfill a need when he is hungry. But yet, if he's caught, he must repay 7 times over. He might even have to give all the wealth of his house. But a man who commits adultery with a woman, he lacks sense. And whoever does it destroys his own life. He'll be beaten and despised, and his reproach will not be wiped away. For jealousy kindles a husband's rage, and he will not show mercy when he takes revenge. He would not consider any compensation. He wouldn't be willing even if you multiplied the compensation. Solomon is saying, of all the traps you could possibly fall into, do not fall into this one. This trap is impossible to escape, and its consequences are far, far reaching. And remember, he's not just talking about adultery, he's talking about indulging in the forbidden, going toward the forbidden. I want you to think of animal traps. You know, at the store, at Walmart, you might see the mouse traps, and some of them will be labeled humane. In other words, it doesn't actually kill the mouse, it just boxes it up for you, and you walk in on a life, right? But then there's other traps that are not so humane, right? Think of like a bear trap, okay? You know, spring-loaded, it lays flat on the ground, and you step in the middle, and it'll, you know, trap your leg, or snap your leg, or break your leg, or what have you. As nasty as a bear trap is, if you understand the mechanics of it, you can get out of it. You push on the levers on the sides, you push it down, and it releases, and you can get your leg out. That's why Solomon is talking about the thief stealing a loaf of bread. He's saying with a thief who steals to survive, yeah, stealing is bad, but it's kind of understandable if you're trying not to starve to death, right? If someone, you know, in the end, you can really throw money at that problem and it goes away. That person can pay back bread, you know, you can pay back 7 times over. You could even give everything that you have. And in the end, there's really no harm done. But indulging in the forbidden, that's something else entirely. You can't throw money at that. In the case of adultery, you can't buy off a jealous husband's eyes. You can't buy him off. There are some problems that money won't fix, because this is not about survival. This is about pure excess. And the rules of those traps are totally different, and the consequences are far, far worse. This is not a bear trap. There is no release button for this trap. It doesn't try to snap your leg. It tries to snap your neck. And I want to pause here just for a second. And I know this is kind of like severe and grave, right? But I want to pause just for a second and understand who it is that's writing this. It's Solomon, son of the great King David. And just for a little Baptist Bible trivia, who was Solomon's mother? Bathsheba. The same woman that David saw bathing on a rooftop, saw the forbidden, desired her, took her, murdered her husband to cover up his sin. That's the person that's writing this. He saw anyone who looks at the life of David will point to that one event, as that is what started a cascade, a downward spiral of his life and his house. Think about the curse. The sword will not leave your house. The raping of Tamar, Absalom being killed. It's all because of this. Because David could not control his lust for the forbidden. And so Solomon is hot on this topic. Son of all things, get a hold of it. I am 2 generations in, and we are still feeling the effects of David's lack of ability to stay away from the forbidden. Now, how do we avoid this trap? It's almost insultingly simple. Verse 25. Verse 25, look at that together. It says, do not lust in your heart for her beauty, and do not let her captivate you with her alluring eyes. Solomon says, do not want that. It's fake. Do not want her, metaphorical her, and don't you dare believe her when she says she wants you. What does the eyes of a prostitute say? Just disclaimer, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this. What do the eyes of a prostitute say? But I'll just say it out there. The eyes of a prostitute say, I want you. You are desirable, and I know you want me. I am desirable. That is what Solomon is going at. He's saying, do not lust after her, and do not believe her when she says she wants you. It's fake. It's not true. It's not true. Do not desire her. Now, I told you at the beginning I would not try to turn a negative into a positive, okay? Because most sermons, you're going to have the positive command, and I can see some of you, the wheels are turning. You're already taking the negatives, and you're working them into positives. If we're saying, don't desire what is fake, what are we going to do? Desire what is real. Do not be gullible, be discerning. Do not be lazy, be diligent. You know, we want to turn the negatives into positives. And those are really good applications. They're good. But I'm just going to give you a warning right here. It's not where Solomon's going. Okay? It's beyond this chapter where Solomon's going. Right now, I want us to just sit in the negative command. Because next week, in next chapter, Solomon is going to paint a very detailed picture of this woman, this adulterous woman, this lady folly. And he's going to say, so you think she's beautiful, do you? She's gorgeous. You think she's flirty? She's fun? She says the right things? She makes you feel good? You feel alive when you're with her? Let me show you someone. Behold, Lady Wisdom. Look at every nuance of her. And the more you study her, the more your Lady Folly will be shown for who she really is. I will show you a woman that puts that woman to shame because she actually possesses the qualities that your Lady Folly only pretends to have. It's a beautiful, beautiful chapter. But for right now, we're not there. Right now, we just sit in the choice of what we do not desire. Do not desire her. It's fake. It's fake. Do not indulge your desire for the forbidden. Now, after having lived here the past 6 months, I can now say that my driving up and down North Trentham Road is a much more enjoyable experience. I have started to acquire what I affectionately call the Columbia instinct, to where it's not my upcoming turns that motivate my lane changes, but it's something in my subconscious, something deep within me that steers me to the left or to the right, and I trust that they're guiding me away from potholes. And that is my prayer for you this morning, each and every one of you. I pray that as you journey through your life, I pray that the Holy Spirit and the Spirit inside of you is warning you of red flags and that you steer your life away from the potholes. I pray that you have discernment over the circumstances of your life, that you can see through those, identify those potholes, and make choices to steer your life away from these potholes. Because not all of them are light. Some of them have serious consequences that can last for generations. Solomon warns his son to stay between the lines. I pray that we do too. Avoid the pothole of gullibility. Avoid the pothole of laziness. Avoid the pothole of you lying and desiring to control. And avoid the pothole of desiring the forbidden. Will you pray with me?